Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Real Talks. My name is David Steele. I hope everybody's having a great weekend so far. Um, and so I thought I would do this, and I promised this to you guys the other day, and I just fell asleep. It's been a rough week, but nonetheless, I said I was going to do this for you guys, and we're going to do it right now. So this here is the India. So, truth be told, I just got up this morning. I saw the early show of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. So, this is a spoiler cast. So, I'm going to be talking about everything in here. If you haven't seen this movie, okay, and you do want to watch this, I'd advise going to watch the movie and then come back and watch this because I'm going to be saying everything about the movie and I don't want to ruin for you guys. So it was really interesting. So as I said, it was an early show. It was an 8:50 show, and I saw this in IMAX, and it was good. I mean, as far as the screen and everything else, it was. So there were a couple of previews that we have coming up later on this summer and this year that I wanted to touch upon. And first of all, it was beautiful because there was only five people in the theater, five or six people, and I had the aisle basically all to myself. I think it was an older couple all the way down to the right where I usually sit, but it was a different perspective. I was right in the middle. Anyways, so this was, as you go to the theater, go to the movies, and you're always seeing previews. Sometimes it's 10, 15, 20 minutes. So this was on the big IMAX screen, but it looked fantastic. I just want to run through a couple of these. I mean, we've talked about them in the past, but looking at them on an IMAX screen was completely different. So one of the first ones that was shown was Oppenheimer, and mind you, I'm sure everybody's seen the trailer that's interested in it, and it looks stunning. It just looked absolutely stunning. I can't wait to see what Christopher Nolan's done with this. Um, and it looks fabulous. And just on that big, there's something to be said about watching a movie on a big screen with massive speakers and the projection and everything else. And it was fabulous. Loved it. And so this was one of the first ones I saw. Okay. Um, and there was actually Dune 2. Okay. The trailer has been released since. Okay. And then moving on, Mission Impossible. Mission Impossible it's one of those films that I know I keep harping on it and whatever else, but seeing it on the big screen, guys, and I'm going to, and I haven't seen this yet. I'm probably going to go in the next week to see it. But guys, if you haven't seen it on the big screen, go watch it. It looks incredible, and the, I'm telling you, there's a difference between actually watching it on a 2D screen and then watching it in IMAX. First of all, this was filmed mostly. Oppenheimer was done on IMAX, so I mean it was specifically made for IMAX. But this it just looks unbelievably good, and I think that when you see it, you're gonna. I mean, look, there has been I think two reviews that have not, you know, they were average. Everyone else said this movie is just out of sight good, and now that we have the numbers for Indiana Jones and um, what that's going to probably make. It will be interesting to see what happens moving forward. Um, I think that it's going to be unbelievably good. I think it's going to be unbelievably good, and what you know, this is a film that I think um, you have to experience. You have to experience on the big screen because not only was it made for the big screen, but it's just going to be fun. So, yeah, definitely. Um, so moving on, another film that I actually this is going to be a Netflix film, and this is actually coming out in September. But Curator. So anybody who's not familiar with the Curator, okay, this looks really good. Um, this is about basically a it's about AI. Okay, AI is um, kind of taken over, and they're in a war um, with humans. And so this is a defined as a post-apocalyptic thriller with a future impacted by war and humans and AI. So Gareth Edwards did this. He is the one that directed Rogue One. So this stars Ralph Fiennes and Allison Janney too, and so um, this looks really really good. And it's about essentially somebody that takes over in. So John David Washington stars in it too, and it looks absolutely incredible. Um, yeah, I'm really action packed. You know, I mean, you have the struggle of AI versus the humans, and what do you do? You know, will they take over the world? Type of thing. Looks really really good. I am very much looking forward to this. This comes out in the end at the end of September. September is going to be a big month too. September is going to be a big month. We have the Equalizer coming out, and so once we get through that, that is going to be another. But the other film that I didn't even know was being made and went completely off my radar, okay, was The Haunting in Venice. So anybody who's not familiar with this is Kenneth Branagh playing Detective Poirot from the books being adapted, and this one looks unbelievably good. This is a twist. This is a horror type of thing. So um, it looks very good. And this comes out the 15th. It actually comes out a week before. This is directed again by Kenneth Branagh. And so Michelle, Academy Award winning actress Michelle Yeoh is in this. And it just looks unbelievable. So it's Tina Fey is in this. Um, Jamie Dorn. So essentially, the plot is in a post World War II Venice, Perron, now retired and living in his own exile, reluctantly attends a séance. But when one of the guests is murdered, it's up to the former detective to once again uncover the killer. So this is a whodunit, and it just looks fantastic. I mean, right now, murder mysteries are all the rage. I mean, you had Glass Onion come out last year. You know, you've got this coming out, Murder on the Orient. You know, Death on the Nile did not do well because of the whole Arm and Hammer situation, and that's a whole other thing for another time. But yeah, these are doing really well, so that's always good to see. So those were a couple of films that are coming out now, not pictured here, as I said. You know, you had Dune 2, and you had the Expendables 4. That's coming out in September. So that's coming out in the first week of September, and that's your action adventure franchise. Sylvester Stallone, Jason Statham, Megan Fox is being added. The actress she's Palm Kilmanoff, I believe her last name is. She's all over the place right now. I mean, she was just in Guardians 3. She's going to be in the new Mission Impossible a couple weeks. She's going to be in Expendables 4. She's a fantastic actress and so. But you guys didn't come here to talk all about upcoming movies, did you? So we are here, or I'm here to talk about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. So as I said, it was a very early morning show that I attended, and it was a show that it was very nice because it was only about 7 or 8 people in the whole theater, and that was good. So let me what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to give you my overall thoughts on the film, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go by kind of not blow by blow, but I'm definitely going to go by, you know, and talk about things and why they were important and everything else. Um, I want to touch upon as many things as I can because I think it's necessary to. So, first and foremost, let me give you a little background, not background. So, everybody knows the character of Indiana Jones. Okay. Debuted in 1981 with Raiders of the Lost Ark. Okay. Um, so, this is directed by James Mangold. Now, James Mangold, of course, has done classics like Logan, Ford, Ford v Ferrari, and others. Um, and up until that point, with Harrison Ford, all of the films, including Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, had been directed by Steven Spielberg. It was his franchise. So the story goes that, you know, Lucas and Spielberg, Lucas had wanted to make this kind of action adventure um, movie, not movie. Well, from his childhood, he really liked the serials and these action adventure type of roles, and he wrote this character, Indiana Jones, and he had 3 movies planned. And so when Spielberg and Lucas were talking, um, basically he Spielberg promised, "Hey, look, I'll make you the 3 films," and that's what he did. He made Raiders in '81, he made Temple of Doom in '84, and then in '89 he made Last Crusade. Then when he wanted to reprise the role, he came back one last time. So this is the first time that he is not in the director's chair, and he didn't really affect it that much. Um, so that all being said, the villain, okay, as we move through the film, is Matt Mikkelsen's character, and I gotta say he was pretty good. He was very good. He had a lot of screen time as he should have, and he played a very good role as the main villain. I mean, there were proxies he had, but he was the main guy, and it worked really well for him. Um, so I liked him. I liked him as I liked him as a villain, and I thought that it worked out. I thought it worked out for him. So that was good to see. So a couple of the other things. Okay, so essentially you have, and I've explained this to you guys before. So in every single film you watch, in every single action film you watch, I should say, okay, there is what's known as a MacGuffin. And a MacGuffin, okay, is that object or thing that um, basically it's the thing that everybody goes after, right? It's the one thing that everybody goes after. So take Raiders of the Lost Ark. They're both going after the Ark. Take Avengers Infinity War. They're all going after, Thanos is going after the stones. So in this case, okay, it's what's called it's called by another Egyptian name, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce. Okay, but essentially it's the Dial of Destiny. Okay, and there are 2 halves to this dial. Okay, and one of the things that really um, I don't want to say annoyed me, but there was a lot of build up to it. So Antonia says, watched the film on Thursday and had a really good time with it. I had some issues, but overall, a very positive experience. Plus, Harrison Ford is a treasure on screen. Yeah, I liked Harrison Ford. He was a treasure on screen. Um, I thought he did a really good job for what he had. I mean, so this film had everything you really wanted, right? So the callbacks were not too invasive. Okay. Um, you had I thought that Phoebe Waller-Bridges was good. I thought it worked overall. So right in the beginning of the film, so everybody's been talking about the de-aging, the de-aging, the de-aging. So right in the beginning of the film, this is where we get to see the whole. This is that shot. Okay, so we see him being taken. He gets captured and everything else, and so he basically escapes the Nazis. And how he does it. I mean, it was an explosion. So they were looking for this lance that Hitler wanted because he thought it would win the war, kind of like the Ark. And so they find this lance, and this is Mikkel's character here. Okay, and so basically they find out that it's a fake, and the dial is the real thing. And so this guy, okay, the doctor, played by Mads Mikkelsen. Um, Bear with me. Dr. Voller. Okay, Dr. Voller is obsessed with this because he feels like he can not only change history but win the war. So the Nazis actually have a rule, and they can do it correctly. So he is obsessed, and then when we meet Indiana Jones, it's a different Indiana Jones than we're used to. Now, I got to say, backing up real quick, this was this had a $297 million budget. Okay, the CGI, you could definitely see where the CGI went. Okay, was it better than the Flash? I would say yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, there was a lot of it, but so as it stands right now, this is only going to make, and I say only because of the size of the budget, $60 million opening weekend. Okay, and so this was cost $295 million before marketing. Okay, and I mean, so they had this other little movie come out. It was called Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken, and that had a $70 million budget, and that made 5.2 million. The Flash tumbled all the way to eighth to make 5 million with another 67% drop, and is yet to cross 100 million domestic with just under 199 million. So it added another 70 million to the global box office, so it's at 130 right now. So the Flash has only made 139, and so it's going to actually get a boost for 4th of July. Look, I think that the problem here is that it just costs too much money. When you have a movie that it costs almost $300 million to make, it's really tough to get any traction. Okay, because there's so much hype and there's so much stuff that's that everybody's looking forward to. And this was going to make oodles and oodles and oodles. Okay, but it really goes to show you right now, we are in a point, especially this summer and probably moving forward, is quality over quantity. Because when you have a good movie, like a Guardians, like Across the Spider-Verse, like whatever, it has legs. And when you don't have a good movie, it falls by the wayside. And people aren't going to spend their money. And I think that's an important thing. So, yeah. So $60 million, this movie is going to have to make a lot of money up overseas. Because even if this drops 50%, okay, that's only making $30 million. Because once Mission Impossible comes along, it's going to take all that money. So, and that's opening the 10th. Okay, that's for fan showings. That's actually opening the 12th nationwide, but the 10th are for fan showings. Okay. So, essentially, Indy escapes with half the dial. And then we see him teaching his class, okay, and we see separation papers from Marion, okay, and so he goes in and he starts teaching his class, because he's a professor, and we see this woman who basically is, starts answering a couple. These students look really out of touch. Some of them are sleeping, and this woman kind of basically answers some of the questions. We find out later that she is the daughter of Toby Jones's character, okay, and she got her doctorate, and she's been chasing this thing called the Dial of Destiny, exactly what her father did. And this was kind of a reverse mapping, if you will, of Last Crusade. So she is the one that had all of the diaries and everything else. And whereas in Last Crusade, it was Indiana Jones that happened, right? So they were doing a little bit of backtrack. So they basically go to all of these different places to try and find this dial. But the key is that there were two parts to this. So that it was like these two pieces fit together. So throughout the whole movie, one thing that kind of bothered me was you only saw this dial come together until the last, I would say, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Um, Now there was a kid that was going along with Phoebe, with Helena, okay, during their adventures, and he didn't do anything for him. I mean, it's not like he was emotionally. I didn't feel any connection to the kid, and I think that was something that really he definitely wasn't a short round, right? He was a thief, and I think that was something that not that I don't care if the kid's a thief, okay. It's she was always out for money and how she was doing it and everything else, and so I didn't really care for him at all. And subsequently, so like this scene here where I will say one thing: the editing of the chase of the in Morocco was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic. There was a car chase, that went on for about, I don't know, 10, 12 minutes. So at one point, okay, she was going to auction off the dial. And so Indy goes to Morocco and basically stops her. And there's that funny scene in the trailer where he cracks the whip and everybody. I actually got a chuckle out of it. Okay, it's even funnier in person, to where he cracks the whip and said, that's my goddaughter, and then everybody points the gun at him. And that actually got a rise out of me. But so that editing of that chase was very good. It was very good. And so most of the movie, they were trying to put the pieces of this thing together. So they would have one half, and then, the villain would have the other. It wasn't until about 20 minutes left in the film did the dial actually come together. And it was a sequence on the boat, which, um, they were talking. Phoebe Waller characters were talking with Indiana Jones, and he said, "What if you could change time? What would you do?" And he basically said, "To stop my son from dying," because he went to join the war. And so he's like, I would, tell that person, "Hey, look, your mother was inconsolable," and everything else. And that went nowhere. Like that went nowhere. And I was kind of bummed out about that, because I would have liked to have seen that. Like maybe he goes back and he has a conversation with his son to try and convince him not to join the war. And it didn't work for me. So one of the other plot points in this was, so the kid, he gets kidnapped. Okay. And So the bad guys take him to this place, and they're trying to figure out what to do with them and everything else. So they're basically luring them in there, right? And I didn't feel any emotion for the kid at all. So I didn't really care when he got kidnapped. So that being said, it didn't work for me. And he was able to, he did a pretty smart thing, and it's a distraction, and then killed one of the guards or handcuffed him underwater, and you know, and that worked. But and right when the bad guy was about to ascend to the dial, he jumped on, it caused a distraction. And okay, Indiana gets shot, and then they take him. So that was really the start of the third act. Um, but the whole dial doesn't get used, as I said, until about 20 minutes later, and or with about 20 minutes left in the film. And I'm like, now the CGI was fine with it. I just didn't. I thought the whole film was probably about 20 minutes too long. There are sequences they could have cut out that frankly didn't need to be in there. Like, I think what they were trying to do is use this kid like they used Short Round in 1984. They were trying to recreate that same magic, and it didn't work. I didn't, because Phoebe Waller. I mean, we get a little backstory when they're going, okay, and they're in the cave and everything else, and we find out that he was trying to steal her purse when he was 12, and they've been having separated since. And there's no connection there whatsoever. Like, they have the one conversation, but that's it. I mean, there's no development beyond that. And I didn't like it. I mean, not to say you have to go in depth on it, but a little characterization throughout the whole thing would have gone a long way. And so the fact that she is the goddaughter, I mean, that was the whole connection, right? That was the whole connection. And yeah, so they basically, the bad guys get the dial completed, and then they go back, and he uses it, goes back to wherever he thinks he's going to, um, be able to change history with it. And subsequently, they go to the wrong place. Instead of 1939, they go to like 239 AD, and there's Romans, and there's a big war, and that was pretty cool. That was really cool. And then Indiana had his moment where he wanted to stay there, and that was pretty emotional. And he actually got to talk with somebody in history, and it kind of reminded me of the sequence in the Da Vinci Code with what the villain said. He's like, "We've always observed history. Now we're in history." And it was just like that sequence there. And so at that point, she's like, "Come back. I need you. I need you." He doesn't know what he's talking about. And she essentially, she knocks him out. And then he wakes up in his apartment, or so he thinks it's his apartment. And it's Mary, the woman, so she walks in with, somebody else, her son, I think. And then, you know, that's it. So, I mean, the end, there was a little bit of a callback, but that was very rough. I mean, they had some other, so you had Psy come back, which was pretty cool. I thought that was a really cool moment, you know. Um, the comedy was there. Sometimes it landed, sometimes it didn't. But yeah, so they tried to recreate this film again, and it was okay. I mean, I wasn't blown away by it, and I'm not. I mean, we've waited for how long for this, so yeah. I mean, it was okay. I wasn't really like I wasn't really over the moon about it. I mean, making only $60 million kind of is right on par with. Look at it this way, guys. Flash made 55. Flash made 55 million. So, I mean, if that tells you something, obviously it dropped off like a rock. But Flash made 60 million. Or yeah, Flash made $55 million. I mean, this wasn't going to break the bank. I get it, but still, this was highly, highly anticipated. And I think Lucasfilm was a little disappointed. This made $7.1 million on Thursday night. This made 24 million opening night on Friday. So that tells you something. Um, and it was okay. It wasn't like it did anything fantastic. Um, I mean, I probably will not go back and see it again. It right now has a 68% on Rotten Tomatoes. Okay, 68% by the critics and 88% by the audience. And look, that's great. Sometimes, there are films out there that critics don't like that the film audience does. Um, yeah, I think what they were trying to do, the ending, like really what I would have myself, I would have rather seen Indiana Jones have a meaningful death rather than go back and live happily ever after with Mary. They try, there was that whole callback of dialogue back in Last Crusade, I think it was, as the film ended, and that was good. But it just didn't work for me. Um, I think what they were trying to do is they were trying to do something like Endgame did, where you know Cap goes to after he returns the stones. Cap goes to live with um, Peggy, and they live happily ever after. And that I had more emotion to it. Okay, but this just didn't. And I think it's because she wasn't in all the movies and whatever else. But it was okay. It was okay. I mean, I really the CGI was good, wasn't great. Um, as I said, I thought he did a good job with the um, being the villain. Matt Mickelson was pretty good as Dr. Voller, and it had the right amount of callbacks. Okay, whether it was Psy or there was a scene where they were climbing in the cave, and he's like, I've been shot at 6 times. I've had to drink the blood of Kali. I've had to do so there were callbacks that which were good. Okay, um, not overbearing, and yeah, I mean, there's only so much you can do with Indiana Jones, right? So, I mean, having him go on a brand new adventure, I would have liked to have seen him go back, get the dial himself, use it to go back and talk to his son. That's what I would love to have seen, right? Um, yeah, there's a lot to be desired. It was okay. It wasn't great, and I think that's what I think they were shooting for. Um, whether it's going to make its money back, that remains to be seen. But I think that, and I didn't have a problem with the de aging at all. The whole de aging thing to me didn't have any bearing on whether the story was good or bad. And I think that was important to note too, because there had been so much uproar about, oh my God, they're using this de aging process. And it was 10 minutes. It was the first 10 minutes of the film. If this had gone throughout the whole thing, I will say this. I did like the flashbacks. That they put the flashbacks in the correct place. Like this here is a flashback. We start the film with a flashback, and then we go to present day. Okay. And then we get another flashback. So I did like that whole thing. Um, yeah. So I mean, it was good. It wasn't great, and I think that it's going to be fine. And yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not too keen on this because it. I'm not saying everything's got to be a home run. I'm not saying that at all. But once again, when you look forward to something and there's so much anticipation and there's so much hype, and it's like, and you're let down, you kind of want the hype to live up to what it is. That's like Mission Impossible. Mission Impossible has had all this hype around it through all this thing, and I mean, it looks like this is going to be not only a big movie financially, okay, but this is actually going to live up to the hype. And right now, it's tracking at $90 million to start, and so that's going to be the key thing moving forward. Is how do you know if it does? I mean, I think it's going to make probably around 100. I think it's going to be a little bit bigger than um, the hype is. So I'm trying to see here if yeah. So this isn't even there are no rate. I don't know when the I'd be curious to find out when the embargo lifts. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, that's that's Indiana Jones. It was okay. If you want a fun time, there are elements to this film that are really good. They're really really good. Okay, the callbacks were good. Okay, the action was fun. There wasn't any romance, and maybe that was part of it too. Um, Obviously, you're not going to do that, but I mean, you know, so that could have been lackluster. I didn't really have any connection with the kid. So, I mean, even one of the things today, like 40 years, almost 40 years later, people love short round. And there was no connection there. So, but yeah, this was pretty quick because, so I'm going to be going on, guys, I'm going to be coming on later today, probably around 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, and do ask me anything. Um, but yeah, this is why this is kind of short. But yeah, it was okay. Anybody who's an Indiana Jones fan is going to enjoy this. Anybody who isn't is not going to. Um, so, and they wanted to have him have a happy ending, and I think that was the thing that. I mean, let's put it this way: when we look back in 5, 10 years, this is probably going to be one of those films that's number I don't know 4. You know, you're always going to have Raiders up there, and the first 3 films are always going to be up there and some more. Then you're going to have Dial of Destiny and Kingdom of Skull. So, but yeah, this was a pretty quick stream. Like I said, come back in a couple hours. I'll tweet out the time I put it out, and that is going to do it. So that is That is Indiana Jones. I almost said Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. That is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And I will be back later on today. As I said, probably around 3. We'll call it 3:30. We'll call it 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 6 p.m. 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, and for Ask Me Anything. And then that's going to be for everybody who shows up and comes in. Everything's fair game. Everything is pretty much fair game. So, and we'll do that for a couple hours. So, okay, guys, that's going to do it. So, do the 3 things you got to do: be safe, be careful, have a great weekend, and 4th of July. I will see everybody in a couple hours for the Ask Me Anything stream. I'm David Steele, and this has been Real Talks.